"Daddy, why is she crying?" A child's love shattered the chains that men made. The sun hung low over the Martian desert, turning the red sand into a glowing sea of orange and gold. The small town of Redridge lay at the edge of a wide canyon, its wooden buildings worn from dust storms and years of neglect. Hover wagons rattled along the main street, their engines humming softly, while robotic horses grazed lazily near water tanks. 7-year-old Tommy perched on the steps of the old saloon, his small feet swinging above the dusty ground. He loved watching the strange mix of old and new in his town. Cowboys in leather boots riding mechanical horses, miners carrying glowing ore, and merchants selling steaming cups of nutrient tea. But today his attention was drawn to something far more troubling. Near the edge of the street a young woman sat alone, her head bent, shoulders shaking as tears fell silently onto the sand. Tommy's curiosity and concern pulled him closer. He hadn't seen anyone cry like that in a long time. The town was rough, and people rarely showed their feelings openly. "Daddy!" Tommy called softly, looking up at Sheriff Briggs, who leaned against the doorway of the sheriff's office. "Why is she crying?" Sheriff Briggs, tall and weathered with a silver streak in his hair, frowned. His eyes followed Tommy to the woman. He sighed and knelt down to meet his son's gaze. "That is a hard thing to explain, son. Some people face hard times, and some men in this town, they make life difficult for others." Tommy tilted his head. "But why? Why would anyone make someone cry?" Briggs hesitated. He wanted to answer simply, but the truth was complicated. Because some people think only about themselves, Tommy. They forget what it means to care. Tommy's brow furrowed. His small hands clenched into fists. "That's not fair." "No," Briggs said quietly. "It isn't." Tommy's gaze returned to the young woman. Her hair was dark and tangled, and her eyes were red from crying. He could see fear and sadness in her face. He wanted to help, but he was only a little boy. Still, he couldn't just walk away. That night, after dinner, Tommy lay awake in his small bunk. He kept thinking about her. Who was she? Why was she alone? The images of her tears replayed in his mind, and he knew he had to do something, even if he didn't yet know what. By the next morning, Tommy had made a plan. He slipped quietly out of the house, careful not to wake his father, and headed toward the canyon where the woman had gone the previous night. The town was already busy with miners and merchants, but Tommy ducked behind crates and crates of supplies moving silently. He spotted her sitting by a small rock formation, hugging her knees. Her eyes widened when she noticed him, fear flashing for just a moment before she tried to hide it. I won't hurt you," Tommy said softly, stepping closer. "Why are you crying?" The woman's lips trembled. She looked around as if checking that no one else was watching. "My name is Lila," she whispered. I can't stay here. They won't let me go. They keep me because of the ore I found for them. The men, they think I belong to their work." Tommy's eyes widened. "That's not right. You shouldn't have to stay if you don't want to." Lila gave a weak smile. "It's not that easy, little one. These men, they have power here, and I have nowhere else to run." Tommy's small mind raced. He had seen mechanical horses, hovering wagons, even old abandoned mechs in the canyon. But he was just a boy. What could he do against powerful men? Yet, even with his fear, he felt something stir inside him. The sadness he had seen in Lila's eyes was unfair, and he couldn't leave her to face it alone. He clenched his fists, determination shining in his eyes. "We'll figure something out," he said. I can help." Lila looked at him, surprised. "You're just a child. How could you possibly help me?" Tommy smiled faintly. "Maybe because children see things differently." Maybe I could be clever in ways they won't expect." For the next few days, Tommy watched Lila from a distance. He saw the men from the mining gang, rough-looking and armed with laser cutters, watching her constantly. He noticed when they moved her from place to place, always keeping her under guard. He couldn't talk to them. They were too dangerous. But he could watch, and he could think. One afternoon, Tommy remembered the old mech horse he had seen in the canyon weeks ago. It was dusty and broken, its metal legs bent, but it was still there. He ran to it, examining the controls. "If I fix this," he whispered to himself, "maybe I can help her escape, just a little." He spent hours cleaning the circuits, tightening wires, and carefully reconnecting the power core. His small hands shook with excitement and fear. Finally, with a hiss and a puff of steam, the mech horse whirred to life. Its glowing eyes scanned the canyon, and Tommy felt a rush of hope. That evening, he brought Lila to the canyon under the cover of darkness. I fixed something, he said proudly. It can help us move without them seeing. Lila's eyes filled with cautious hope. You really did this for me? Tommy nodded.
I couldn't just let you cry anymore. Not if I could do something.
Together they mounted the mech horse. It moved slowly at first, then faster as they learned its controls. The night air was cold, but for the first time in days, Lila laughed softly, a sound that made Tommy's heart lift. But danger was never far away. From the ridge above, the gang's leader spotted them. Get them! He shouted. Don't let that brat or the woman escape. The mech horse whirred and stomped, carrying Tommy and Lila through the narrow canyon paths. Rocks tumbled under its heavy feet, dust clouds rising around them. Tommy held on tight, feeling the rush of adrenaline mixed with fear, but also the strange thrill of doing something brave. Finally, they reached a small cave hidden behind a rock wall. Tommy led Lila inside. They both collapsed onto the sandy floor, breathing hard. You're brave, little one, Lila said softly, her tears gone for now, replaced with awe. I don't know how to thank you. Tommy shook his head. No, I needs to thank me. I just couldn't leave you crying. For a moment the canyon was silent except for the mech horse's soft hum and the distant wind over the Martian desert. In that quiet, Lila felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Safety. But Tommy knew this was only the beginning. The gang wouldn't give up easily, and the town was full of dangers he didn't yet understand. Still, with Lila by his side and the mech horse under them, he felt a spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they could outsmart the men who tried to control her. As they settled into the shadows of the cave, Tommy whispered, almost to himself, Tomorrow, we start to make things right. And for the first time in days, Lila smiled. A small, fragile smile, but a smile that meant the chains of fear were starting to crack. The stars above Mars shone bright, and the dusty canyon seemed less lonely than it had before. A child's courage had begun to change the world, one small step at a time. The morning sun rose slowly over the red cliffs of Mars, casting long shadows across the canyon. Inside the hidden cave, Tommy and Lila sat quietly. The mech horse hummed softly, its glowing eyes scanning the dark corners of the cavern. The night had been long, and both of them were exhausted, but the memory of fear was replaced with a spark of hope. Do you think they'll come for us? Lila asked, her voice trembling slightly. Tommy shook his head. We have the advantage. They won't expect a little boy and a woman to be clever. You really believe that, don't you? I have to, Tommy said firmly, because if I don't, then who will? Lila's gaze softened. She had not seen so much courage in anyone in a long time, especially from someone so small and innocent. All right, she said. We'll be clever, together. Tommy led Lila out of the cave and down the canyon, careful to keep to the shadows. He had a plan. He remembered the old mining transport drones he had seen earlier, hovering over the cliffs to watch the workers and the townspeople. Those drones were the gang's eyes. If he could disable them even for a short time, they could move more freely. Tommy climbed a narrow rock face, careful not to slip. He reached a small ridge overlooking one of the drones. Using a piece of wire he had scavenged from the abandoned mech horse, he managed to tangle the drone's propellers. Sparks flew, and the drone crashed with a soft thud onto the rocks below. Tommy grinned. That's one, he whispered. Lila watched in amazement. You did that all by yourself? Tommy nodded. I learned by watching. Sometimes it's not about strength. It's about thinking faster than them. The rest of the morning passed in cautious movements. Tommy and Lila used the mech horse to hide in the canyon's curves, always staying out of the gang's view. They found small paths and hidden tunnels that gave them brief safety from the patrols above. Each step was risky, but Tommy's small size and clever thinking kept them safe. By afternoon, they reached the ruins of an old mining camp, abandoned for decades. Broken equipment and rusted vehicles littered the ground. But Tommy's eyes were drawn to one thing, a partially buried exosuit, the kind the first settlers had worn when exploring Mars's deserts. Lila knelt beside it. Do you think it still works? She asked, brushing the red dust from the metal. Tommy examined the suit. Maybe if we can fix the circuits, it could help us protect ourselves. They spent hours cleaning the exosuit, testing circuits and connecting power cells. Each spark of life in the machine gave them courage. The suit powered up, lights blinking across its chest and arms. Lila's face lit up with amazement. This could actually work. Tommy nodded. It's not about fighting, it's about being smart. We can use it to scare them, confuse them, or move quickly. As evening fell, they prepared to return to the canyon's edge. But the gang was already waiting. 2 men, armed with energy cutters, blocked the path to the main road. They had likely tracked the drone's crash. Tommy's heart raced, but he stayed calm. Lila, follow my lead, he whispered. He activated the mech horse, its legs pumping, its engines humming louder. With a quick twist of the controls, it jumped a small ridge, surprising the gang. The men shouted, running to catch them, but Tommy's quick thinking forced them into a trap. A narrow canyon passage where the mech horse could move easily, but the men could not. Lila's exosuit added another layer of protection. The small lights on her suit flashed, and the mechanical arms extended just enough to make her appear larger and more dangerous. The gang hesitated, unsure whether to attack. Tommy seized the moment. "This way," he called, leading Lila through a hidden tunnel he had discovered the day before. Dust swirled around them, and the glow from the exosuit lit the dark walls. For the first time, Lila felt the thrill of hope, a feeling she hadn't experienced in months. Hours passed as they navigated the maze of tunnels and canyon paths. Each turn and shadow was dangerous, but Tommy's memory of the terrain gave them an advantage. He had watched the gang's patrols for days and had memorized every shortcut. Finally, they reached a small plateau overlooking the town. Below, Red Ridge spread out like a tiny model. Hover wagons moved slowly along the streets, and the gang's men patrolled as usual, unaware that the children above had escaped their notice. "We made it," Lila whispered, tears of relief glistening in her eyes. Tommy smiled, but he knew this was only a temporary victory. "Yes, but we can't stay here long. They'll come looking for us." "We need to plan something bigger." Lila nodded. She had begun to trust him, and a strange bond had formed between them. "What do you have in mind?" Tommy thought carefully. "We use what we've learned and what we've found. The mech horse, the exosuit, maybe even the old mining drones. If we can scare them, confuse them, we can buy time and maybe get the town on our side." Lila raised an eyebrow. "Get the town?" "They're scared of the gang, Tommy. Most of them would never fight back." Tommy shook his head. "People aren't as weak as they think. Sometimes all it takes is one small spark to light a fire. And we can be that spark."
Night fell over the canyon.
Stars sparkled above the red rocks, and the twin moons of Mars shone faintly. Tommy and Lila made their way back to the cave for the night, taking care to avoid patrols. They shared a quiet meal of nutrient bars and water, their minds racing with plans. "Do you think we can really do it?" Lila asked softly. Tommy nodded. "I have to believe we can. I can't just watch people cry anymore. I can't let anyone be afraid forever." Lila smiled faintly, resting her head against the cave wall. "You're brave, little one. Smarter than anyone I've ever met. Maybe we can do this together." Tommy smiled back. "We will. We just have to be clever, patient, and brave." The next morning, they began preparing for the first real step in their plan. Tommy had studied the gang's patrols and routes, marking weak points where they could move without being seen. Lila practiced moving in her exosuit, testing the limits of its strength and speed. The mech horse stood ready, its engines humming softly like a loyal companion. By noon, they were ready for action. Tommy led Lila toward a ridge where they could see the gang's leader. The man was tall, with a rough face and a booming voice. He commanded the gang with cruelty, but Tommy had a plan. "Watch carefully," Tommy whispered. "We only have one chance to make them afraid, not hurt them. Just show them we're clever and not weak." They waited for the right moment, then activated the exosuit's lights, sending a sudden beam across the canyon, while the mech horse stomped loudly below. The sound echoed, amplified by the rocks, startling the gang. Drones above blinked erratically as Tommy had tampered with their circuits again. The gang froze. Confused, unsure of what was happening, they retreated slightly, giving Tommy and Lila a small but vital victory. "See?" Tommy whispered. "It works. We just have to keep being smart, keep moving, and never show fear." Lila nodded. For the first time in months, she felt hope bloom inside her. She realized that with Tommy's courage and cleverness and her determination, they could stand against the gang, and maybe, just maybe, change the town forever. As night fell again over Red Ridge, the two of them returned to their cave. Tommy looked at the stars, thinking about tomorrow.
We're not done yet, he said softly.
No, Leela agreed. But we've started something, and that's all we need for now. Above them, the wind carried the faint hum of the mech horse and the silent promise of rebellion. A child's courage and a woman's hope had become the spark that would light the fire of change. And far below, the gang had begun to whisper, afraid and unsure. For the first time they felt the cracks in their power. The sun had barely risen over the Martian cliffs when Tommy and Lila prepared for another day of careful planning. The canyon was quiet, but the tension hung thick in the air. The gang had discovered the strange interruptions from the night before, and Tommy knew that their clever little actions had shaken the men more than he realized. "Are you ready?" Tommy asked, checking the mech horse's controls. Its metal legs hummed softly as it powered up, a faithful companion ready to move at his command. Lila tightened the straps of her exosuit. "I'm ready." "Let's make them think twice about chasing us." Tommy nodded. "Remember, we don't fight. We trick them. We confuse them. And we move fast." From the ridge above, they could see the town below. Dust rose as hover wagons and patrol drones moved along the streets. The gang had doubled their efforts, sending more men and machines to watch the canyon paths. Tommy clenched his small fists. This was going to be tricky, but he had spent days memorizing every twist and turn of the canyon. "Follow me closely," he whispered, mounting the mech horse with Lila behind him. They moved through narrow passages, silent and fast. The mech horse's powerful legs carried them over rocks and sand, while Lila's exosuit protected her from small obstacles and gave her an intimidating presence. From afar, any observer would mistake them for a single large, unstoppable force. That was the plan. Ahead, they saw the gang's patrols. 2 men with laser cutters were checking the canyon's narrow trails. Tommy slowed the mech horse, letting the shadows hide them. He pointed to a small pile of rocks above a ledge. "Push those down when I give the signal. It'll make noise and scare them, but it won't hurt anyone." Lila nodded, gripping the controls of her suit. Together, they nudged the rocks. The pile tumbled, crashing noisily onto the trail below. The gangmen jumped back, unsure of what had happened. Their patrol drones flickered strangely, thanks to Tommy's previous tampering. "Now!" Tommy shouted. The mech horse leaped forward, carrying them through the canyon as the gang scrambled, confused. Hours passed as they moved through hidden paths. They encountered more patrols, but each time Tommy's clever use of shadows, rocks, and the exosuit's lights allowed them to escape without confrontation. Lila began to trust the boy completely, amazed at his ability to plan, predict, and outsmart the men who had terrified her for so long. Eventually, they reached the ruins of an old mining facility at the edge of the canyon. Here, long-abandoned vehicles and machinery from the first Martian settlers were scattered across the red rocks. Tommy's eyes lit up. "We can use these to block their path," he whispered. Lila examined a row of rusted cargo wagons. "If we position them carefully, it could slow the gang down or even trap them temporarily." They worked quietly, pushing heavy wagons into narrow passageways. The exosuit helped Lila lift machinery that Tommy alone could not move. The mech horse stomped the ground, helping to nudge larger pieces into place. By the time the sun began to set, the narrow canyon paths were obstructed, creating a maze of obstacles that the gang would struggle to navigate. Tommy stepped back to admire their work. "Not perfect," he said, "but it's enough to give us the advantage we need." Lila smiled, feeling a surge of hope. "You're incredible, Tommy. I've never seen anyone your age think like this." Tommy grinned. "I just don't like seeing people cry." As darkness fell, the gang finally discovered their interference. The leader, a tall man with a rough, scarred face, barked orders from the ridge. "Find them. They can't hide forever. Whoever that boy is, he's clever, but I'll catch him." Tommy and Lila watched from a safe distance. The gang began moving cautiously through the obstructed canyon, confused and slowed by the obstacles. The boy's heart pounded, but he felt a thrill of satisfaction. For the first time, the gang's control over the canyon seemed weaker, uncertain. "Look at them," Tommy whispered. "They're starting to hesitate." "That's all we needed." Lila nodded. "We're not just running, we're making them afraid." Carefully, cleverly, afraid. Night fell, and the 2 of them settled in another hidden cave. The wind howled across the canyon, carrying fine red dust through the narrow openings. Tommy reviewed the map he had memorized, plotting their next steps. Lila sat beside him, exhausted but energized by hope. "You think this will really work?" she asked. "Do you think we can stop them completely?" Tommy considered her question carefully. I don't know if we can stop them forever, but I know we can change things if we're smart and brave. If we show the town that the gang isn't all powerful, they might stand with us. Lila leaned back against the rock wall. I've been alone for so long. I forgot what it was like to feel safe or to hope. You remind me of that. Tommy smiled softly. Then we'll make sure no one else has to feel unsafe. The next day they began the most daring part of their plan. Tommy had discovered an old observation tower near the edge of the canyon. From here they could see the gang's leader and his patrols clearly. Using the mech horse and the exosuit, they moved into position. Tommy's plan was simple but risky. Confuse the gang, make them think the canyon was full of threats, and give the townspeople time to realize that resistance was possible. He activated a small flare on the mech horse, creating sudden flashes of light that reflected off the canyon walls. Lila used her exosuit to make mechanical sounds, clanking and moving metal pieces to amplify the illusion of a larger force. The gang paused, staring at the canyon in disbelief. Drones flickered and malfunctioned, adding to the chaos. The men began arguing, unsure what to do. "It's a trap," one shouted. "Move carefully, or we'll lose everything." Tommy and Leela stayed hidden, watching their plan unfold perfectly. "See?" Tommy whispered. "They're starting to doubt themselves." By nightfall, the gang had retreated to regroup. The canyon was quiet again, and the boy and woman emerged from their hiding spot. Lila laughed softly, brushing red dust from her hair. "We actually did it. We made them afraid without fighting." Tommy nodded, proud but cautious. "We can't celebrate yet. They'll come back, and probably stronger. But this is a start." For the first time, Lila felt a real sense of freedom. She no longer trembled at every shadow. She had a companion, a boy who had reminded her that courage could be small but powerful. She realized that with cleverness and determination, even the strongest chains could be challenged. Tommy looked at the stars above Mars, feeling a mixture of exhaustion and hope. "Tomorrow," he said softly, "we'll make the town see that they don't have to be afraid either. We'll show everyone that cleverness and courage matter more than fear and power." Lila placed a hand on his shoulder. "I believe you, Tommy. And I believe in us. No one will cry if we can help it." The canyon was silent except for the soft hum of the mech horse and the faint wind through the rocks. Tommy and Lila sat together, planning their next move. They had taken the first step in breaking the gang's power, not with weapons, but with cleverness, courage, and hope. And far below, in the town of Redridge, whispers began to spread. The gang's men were uneasy, unsure who was behind the strange disruptions and clever tricks. For the first time, cracks appeared in their authority, and fear began to turn against them. Tommy smiled faintly. "Chains can be broken," he whispered. "Even the ones men put on other people if you have courage, hope, and a clever plan." Lila nodded, watching him. "Tomorrow, we go further. We show them that no one controls who they can hurt or who they can scare." The stars twinkled above the Martian desert, silent witnesses to a child's courage and a woman's hope. The canyon, once a place of fear and chains, now held the promise of change. And in that promise, Tommy and Lila found the strength to face whatever came next. The morning sun painted the Martian desert in shades of orange and gold. The small town of Redridge stirred awake. Unaware of the quiet war waged in the canyon just beyond its borders, Tommy and Lila stood on a high ridge looking down at the town. The dust of the streets shimmered, and hover wagons moved slowly along the worn paths. "We have to do this today," Tommy whispered, tightening his grip on the mech horse's controls. "The gang won't hesitate if we wait too long, but if we act smart, we can make the town see that they don't have to be afraid anymore." Lila nodded, adjusting her exosuit. "I trust you, Tommy. Let's show them courage." Their plan was daring, but simple. Using the mech horse, the exosuit, and the clever traps they had set in the canyon, they would create an illusion of a larger force. Not to harm anyone, but to demonstrate that the gang's power was not absolute. The key, Tommy decided, was timing and precision. First, Tommy triggered a series of sparks from the old mining machinery they had discovered in the canyon. Sparks flew across the rocks, flashing against the red dust. Lila activated her exosuit, making mechanical sounds and flashing her lights to exaggerate the illusion of a larger, threatening presence. Below, the gang's leader appeared at the canyon's edge, shouting orders. "They think they can outsmart us? Bring the drones! Bring the men!" But the drones had been tampered with. One by one, they began to malfunction, hovering erratically, spinning out of control. The gang's men scrambled, shouting at each other, unsure what was happening. The illusion worked perfectly. From a distance, it looked as though an entire army had risen to oppose them. Tommy grinned, his small heart pounding with excitement. "Keep going. Make them fear, but don't hurt anyone," he shouted to Lila. The duo moved through the canyon with precision. Rocks tumbled in preset paths, making sounds of movement. The mech horse stomped the ground, shaking dust onto the gang below. Lila's exosuit glowed brightly, and mechanical arms clanked against hidden obstacles. Each step was calculated, each action amplifying the illusion. Below, the townspeople had begun to notice the chaos. At first they watched from behind wooden shutters, curious and afraid. But as the gang faltered and confusion spread, whispers began to rise among the people. "Look! The gang is running away! They're scared!" Tommy watched the town's reactions carefully. Leela, they're starting to see. They're realizing the gang isn't all-powerful. For the first time, hope sparked among the townspeople. Farmers, merchants, and even miners began to step cautiously into the streets, watching the canyon. They had been silent victims for too long, but the clever courage of a small boy and a frightened woman had shown them that fear could be challenged. Meanwhile, the gang's leader tried to regain control. He bellowed at his men, trying to rally them. "Stop hiding, they're just children and a woman. Don't let them trick you." But his men hesitated. Every malfunctioning drone, every clattering rock, every glowing flash from the exosuit convinced them that the forces opposing them were stronger than expected. Confusion replaced confidence. Tommy smiled faintly. "It's working, Lila. They're afraid of cleverness, not power." "That's what I wanted." Leela nodded. "And they'll learn. Strength alone doesn't win everything. Courage and cleverness matter more than brute force." As the sun climbed higher, the chaos below grew. The gang, unsure and fearful, began to retreat. The townspeople slowly stepped forward, realizing that they could stand together. Farmers lifted makeshift tools, miners brandished nothing more than courage and determination, but it was enough to show unity. Tommy and Lila guided the mech horse and the exosuit closer to the town edge. Their movements were slow and calculated, ensuring that no one was harmed. Every step built confidence among the townspeople. Every clank and flash reminded the gang that their reign of fear was fragile. Finally, the gang leader was left alone, standing at the canyon's edge. The illusions of a larger force and the sight of townspeople united convinced him that he could not win this battle. He raised his hands in defeat, signaling his men to retreat. Lila let out a sigh of relief. "It's over for now." Tommy nodded, his small chest rising with pride. "Not just for now, maybe forever. The town has seen the truth. The gang isn't as strong as they thought." The townspeople cheered quietly, moving closer to the canyon. They were cautious but no longer paralyzed by fear. Farmers, merchants, and miners began to talk among themselves, realizing that they had power if they stood together. Lila watched them, tears of relief welling in her eyes. "You did this, Tommy," she said softly, hugging the boy. "Your courage, your cleverness. You reminded everyone what hope looks like." Tommy smiled shyly. "I just didn't want you crying anymore." At that moment, Sheriff Briggs arrived, having followed the commotion from the town. He looked at Tommy and Lila, pride and awe shining in his eyes. "I see now what I didn't understand before," he said. "Sometimes it's not the strongest guns or the fiercest men that change the world. It's a small heart that refuses to watch injustice quietly." Lila turned to him, her face glowing. "Tommy showed me that, and he reminded the town, too. No one has to be afraid anymore." Briggs knelt to Tommy's height. "You've done something incredible, son. You've reminded us all that courage isn't about size or age. It's about heart. And you have more heart than anyone I know." Tommy beamed, feeling the weight of responsibility but also the warmth of accomplishment. The small boy who had once asked Daddy why she crying had not only helped one woman, he had sparked hope across an entire town. As the sun set over Red Ridge, the Martian sky painted itself in brilliant shades of red, orange, and purple. The canyon, once a place of fear and chains, was now quiet, holding the echoes of laughter, relief, and hope. Lila hugged Tommy tightly, her tears finally replaced by a wide smile. "Thank you," she whispered, "for believing, for caring, for helping me find freedom again." Tommy hugged her back. "You didn't need me to be strong. You just needed someone to believe in you." Below, the townspeople cheered, gathering in the square. The gang had fled, realizing that their power had been broken, not through violence, but through cleverness, courage, and unity. Tommy looked on, feeling small but powerful. Sheriff Briggs put a hand on Tommy's shoulder. You've changed, Redridge, son. Maybe even Mars. Tommy smiled, looking at Lila, the townspeople, and the setting sun. We did it together, he said softly. All of us. As night fell, the town celebrated quietly under the Martian stars. The twin moons shone down on the canyon, the red dust settling in peaceful silence. A child's courage had broken chains, and a woman's hope had been restored. The town, once ruled by fear, now had the power of unity and cleverness on its side. Tommy climbed onto the mech horse, Lila by his side. They looked over the town, hearts full, knowing that even in a world of harsh deserts, powerful men, and dangerous gangs, love, courage, and clever thinking could shine brighter than fear. For the first time, Redridge felt free. And for Tommy, the boy who had asked a simple question one morning, "Daddy, why is she crying?" The answer had come in the form of hope restored, chains broken, and hearts healed. The stars above twinkled silently, witnesses to the bravery of a child, the resilience of a woman, and the quiet power of a town united. And for Tommy and Lila, the desert no longer seemed lonely. It was a place of possibility, courage, and a future where no one had to cry because someone believed in them.